Are you someone looking to get your finances on track and thinking about hiring a financial advisor? We'll keep listening as we speak to one of our favorite financial planners to help you end the year strong and start the new year off right. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friend. I'm Dr. Alicia Taylor.
And I'm Dr. Brittany Halford.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
Before we dive into the episode, I want to take a moment to highlight a financial planning company that really impressed me. Bona Fide Finance. Alicia and I recently met with the founder, Ben Martinek, and let me tell you, his approach to financial planning is different in all the right ways.
Yeah, that's right. Ben doesn't just want to grow your money. He wants to make sure your investments actually align with your life goals. And if that wasn't good enough, Ben is not only a certified financial planner, but he's also one of the smartest people I've met. He is the go-to for student loan strategy and tax planning, two areas most advisors overlook, especially for high-income earners. Ben is one of the only people I know that can actually do the calculations to help you figure out if you should file your taxes separately or jointly with your spouse, and also tell you how it might impact your student loan payments. Plus, him and his team will also file your individual tax returns for you and provide tax strategy throughout the year.
What I also love is he's fee only. So you always know exactly what you're paying for, and you don't have to worry about his company selling you products or charging you extra fees or commissions.
So if you want advice that's honest, strategic, and tailored to you, check out bonafidefinance.com/wealthmindedmd. Him and his team specialize in helping doctors and high-income earners build their net worth in all the right ways. Email him today at hello@bonafidefinance.com, and don't forget to tell him we sent you.
Well, Alicia, oh my gosh, it is cold here in Boston, and the end of the year gets so busy for me. I'm curious, how's the temperature in Georgia and how's life down under? No, I'm just kidding.
It's actually so funny that you asked me about this. First of all, the temperature in Georgia's cold. Georgia cold, Boston cold. Different colds, but still cold to me, okay? Cold enough where we have transitioned from cute fall clothes to I just need to stay warm clothes. It is around 30-something degrees-ish, and I'm sure you're like, girl, that's shorts weather up here. But it is cold to me. The interesting thing is that I did something crazy this past weekend, and I flew to Florida for the day, which I know is like, what in the world is going on? One of my close friends from medical school is having a baby, and I really wanted to show up for her, and I could not make it work where I would leave like Friday or Saturday. Just had too much stuff going on, but I was like, maybe I could go for the day. I was also incentivized to go for the day because I was so close to reaching my Delta Platinum Medallion status, and I just needed one more flight, and I had a flight credit on my credit card. I was like, man, the stars are aligning here. The stars are aligning here. The impetus was my friend's baby shower. So if she is listening to this, I want her to know you are special. But those other incentives did sort of push me over the edge, if you will. So anyway, I'm saying this to say I flew to Florida, Miami specifically for the day. The weather was 85 degrees.
Oh, wow.
I grew up in Florida, not Miami, Florida. I grew up in Florida, though. And so I'm used to warmer Christmases, warmer Decembers. But even that was warm for Miami in the middle of December. But it was lovely. Like, I went down there. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm hot. I'm shedding layers. Put on a little sundress, had some sandals on. Her baby shower was in her backyard. She's got this really pretty pool and gorgeous green space in the backyard. So they set things up there. And she's having a little girl. So things are in pink, which is like one of my favorite colors. And we were just eating this like Caribbean Miami food. And it was just like, oh yeah, I love this. And then a few hours later, got my little self back on the plane and went back to the fog and the cold of Atlanta. I'm like, now why didn't I stay long? I'm just thinking to myself, like, why didn't I take off work? But anyway, you asked me about the weather. It was a very long-winded way of saying it is cold here, but warm in Florida, apparently.
Oh my goodness. My mother and stepfather, they go to Florida from like November 10th.
They're the snowbirds.
Yes, they're the snowbirds. They'll be heading back to Michigan in a few weeks. And Brooke, she's always complaining, why don't we go with grandma? I want to go swimming outside. So one year we will have to, take some time off and actually go with them because they have a timeshare. I definitely understand the sentiment. Thankfully, or maybe unfortunately, I didn't get the taste that you got. So I don't feel as bad about it. Oh my. All right. Well, let's now talk about this interview that we're going to have with financial planner, student loan expert, tax accountant, all the things, Ben Martinek. And I know you know much more about him than I do. So, Alicia, how did you actually meet Ben?
Yeah, so I met Ben about 7 years ago. It's been a minute, but I met him when I was actually vetting another company that he had. I was in residency at the time, and I was trying to create a financial wellness guide for the residents, which I think is still up on our GME website for my residency program. But anyway, I was trying to create that guide. And one of the things that I had wanted to do was not only like give the residents some tips and things like that about finances, but also link to different articles and also give them suggestions of companies that they could trust to go to for certain aspects of their lives. And one of those includes like financial planning, but also student loans was a really big deal at that time as well. And Ben Martinek actually had a student loan company. And it was so interesting because there are some really prominent student loan companies, but I had learned through word of mouth that a few of the very large ones actually contracted with Ben's company because Ben did something that they did not do at the time. And that Ben, because he is also a tax professional, could run the analysis of married filing jointly versus married filing separately as it relates to student loans. So let me explain this a little bit more. So when you are married and you have student loans or you and your spouse have student loans, how to file your taxes becomes an interesting question, right? Because most times, if you file your taxes jointly with your spouse, you may pay less overall in taxes. But if you do that, you will also pay more in student loans. And so a lot of married couples were having this question of, is it better for me to save money in taxes by filing my taxes jointly with my spouse and pay a little bit more in student loans? Or is it better for me to save money in student loan payments and pay a little bit more in taxes? And the right answer is the one that's going to save you the most money. But in order to figure out that answer, you need to do some detailed calculations. And Ben, because he's a tax professional, could do that. And so he was basically the mastermind behind doing those calculations for a lot of people. And that is how we met, because I wanted to meet the mastermind behind all of this. Through our meeting, I discovered he was also a financial planner. And so it was like, wait, hold on. You're a financial planner, you're a tax guru, and you can do student loans. Like, I'm sorry, what? You know, people are looking for you. Like, you know how many of my friends would hire you? And he just started laughing. He was like, we don't advertise the tax part and the student loan part that much. And I was like, you should. Anyway, known Ben for years. And I thought, one of the things with our podcast in transparency is I want us to be trusted resources that our listeners can go to and say, wow, I really trust that Brittany and Alicia are going to steer me in the right direction when it comes to any insurance that people need. And also when it comes to managing their financial assets. I like to invest on my own. I know you like to do a lot of stuff on your own as well, but not everybody feels that way. And for those who don't have the time to do it on their own or don't feel like they have the skill set to do it on their own, I wanted us to be people that could point them in the right direction of who they could trust. And I had just found that a lot of financial advisors overcharged for their advice or gave subpar advice or just gave advice that was not as customized for a physician. And Ben didn't do that. And so, I wanted him to hopefully support us in our podcast by sponsoring our podcast, but I just wanted to also tell other people about him. And I'm hoping that our listeners will consider supporting those who support us, which includes Ben, because I really do think that his company is amazing. And if I didn't feel so passionate about investing on my own, I probably would hire Ben to do it. Every year, I keep telling myself that I'm going to hire Ben to do my taxes because it's getting a little bit more cumbersome. And this might be the year that I actually do that. But yeah, I just figured now would be a great time to share one of my secret friends with the world.
Well, I love that. And honestly, as you're talking about just the pain of figuring out whether you should file your taxes separately or jointly, I experienced that pain. As our listeners know, I paid off all of my student loans and I refinanced pretty early on after my husband and I moved in together. But he was in residency and he still had his student loans, and so we are just trying to figure out how should we file things in order to make it make sense. And to your point, the tax accountant was not as well versed with how things would impact our student loans. So it was upon me to kind of do the calculations to figure out the things. And yeah, I just wish I had one person to go to and they could say, oh, I've done everything.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, Alicia, that's me. I'm married. I have student loans. I got to figure out what I should do. Should I file my taxes jointly or separately with my spouse? Or maybe you're like, yeah, taxes. I haven't been worried about that. And come New Year, I'm going to be worried about that. Or if you're like, Alicia, I know I should be investing. I'm a little nervous. I haven't done as much investing as I would have liked. Or maybe you have a financial advisor and you're starting to get a little weary about him or her because you're not sure if they've got you invested in the right things. Ben is somebody that you definitely want to consider. His company's great. He is great. And I cannot wait to delve into the interview with him today. All right, Ben. Well, welcome. We are so excited to have you. I personally am very excited to kind of share you with our audience, if you will. I have known you for years, but I know our audience may just be learning about you. Can you tell our audience a little about your background and how you got interested in becoming a financial advisor?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks so much, first off, Alicia and Brittany, for having me on the show. It's just really an awesome opportunity and honor to be here and to chat with you and share a little bit about my history. I'm a very unconventional financial advisor. It comes through and through. My background is not in finance or mathematics per se. I've always had an analytical mind and background, but I was also very motivated with a strong desire to serve other people. And so early on in my life, I actually joined and entered into a seminary and was considering a life in the work of ministry. And I had done that for a number of years. Part of that work was kind of bringing me away from science, which had been a bit of a focus for me in high school, and moving more into liberal arts and the humanities. And one of the things that I ended up studying rather intensively in that time was philosophy. So I have actually about 20 courses in philosophy. I have a master's degree and with a particular focus in modern ethical theory. So, if we want to ever have like a high level conversation, I can certainly be your guy. That's what I do. I can pull right to that. Yeah, in fact, at one point I was hoping to go and become an academic and teach philosophy. I think I would have really have enjoyed that line of work and career and loved the questions, loved the thought. But some of the realities of the financial makeups of that career were becoming true to me as I was going through the process. And I started to become aware that one of the other things that I'm actually am is a saver and a planner. And I was not seeing much financial upside or opportunity going down this pathway. And as much as it appealed to me, it's like, I don't think this is going to work. And I happened to be introduced to another classmate in grad school who had been running successfully a number of businesses. And we would start having conversations along with philosophical conversations. We started talking about business and finance and investing, which were things that I hadn't really spent any time speaking to. He got me introduced to Robert Kiyosaki, if you guys are familiar with him, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Also got introduced to Dave Ramsey and his Total Money Makeover. And I started to read these books and digest them and became rather influenced by them, both Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, and then Dave Ramsey. And at one point, as we started to kind of straighten things out in our own finances, my wife and I started listening and following Dave Ramsey rather extensively, found him to be very motivating and help us to stay focused. We got introduced to this notion of becoming a certified financial planner through his radio show because people would call in and ask, how do I do what you do, Dave? What you do is really interesting. I think I might want to do that. And I was like, oh, that could be me. That makes sense. How do you make a living this way? And he's like, well, you become a CFP, a certified financial planner. I suppose the rest is history. I entered into the industry, the profession, about 13 years ago in 2012, initially in the broker-dealer insurance space, which is commission focused and heavy. I did that for a few years, ultimately decided I didn't particularly love that business model. Ended up learning that you could only advise clients directly and have them pay you for it. I thought, well, they just made a lot more sense. It aligns our interests together and I get paid and, we're all kind of on the same page in that arrangement. And so I decided to launch a business serving young professionals in their finances and then have bit by bit developed aspects of what we do in the business to better serve them, such as taxes and student loans.
Wow, that is a remarkable story. And let me tell you, maybe money is your ministry. So,
Yeah, that's right. That's true, Brittany. Really, a lot of the work we do is just connecting with people. And so a lot of our sessions have as much of therapy to them as they do with just technical direction on what to do with finance. I could speak just, if you wouldn't mind me, one of the things I've learned in this space, and I think this will be really relevant for all medical professionals, is how much money fundamentally triggers a fight or flight response to us. And so even though we are rational beings and have the ability for high level logical considerations specific to money issues, that tends to go out the door and it becomes a rather emotional, either we're going to fight or more commonly flight, we're going to run away from the issues. And so there can be a lot of emotional aversion when it comes to money. And most people have that issue and struggle with it. And like one of the ways in which we really work with clients is basically by being that third party objective piece to their finances that can either tell them really, hey, you're doing right and you're fine. And even though you may not feel that way, I can tell you at least objectively, your finances are in great shape, and almost give them permission to do things that they wouldn't feel comfortable to do otherwise. Or on the other side, if they are maybe kind of misbehaving and they're kind of putting themselves on a pathway for destruction, I can be like, look, we can't keep this up or it's not going to work, and we can kind of address either side of this emotional concern for people.
I really love that. That's one of the things that Alicia and I kind of talk about a lot is like money is both psychological and logical. But if the amygdala is doing all the work and you can't execute with your prefrontal cortex, then we got to get some emotions in check here. And I love that you also talk about you want to really focus on the person's goals and you want to meet them where they are. And I think that that is a strong pathway to ensuring that your clients can become consistent with what you are recommending because it's in alignment with their goals. So, can you tell me a little bit more about how your company really focuses on individual goals and understanding your clients?
Yeah, I'd love to. One of the things we do, we have a 4-meeting onboarding process for anybody who would want to move forward as a client with ours. And those 4 meetings focus on different aspects of a person's finances. The first one we call our life planning questions, which I'll chat about in a moment. That's really the goal focused meeting. The next one gets into employee benefits, insurance, and debt obligations, which if student loans are in play, that's where we'll really zero in on the student loan piece of things. The third one gets into the investment conversation and basically what's our investment philosophy and approach, and bringing them into speed and up to speed as to how we would manage and handle the money. And then if there's time to start moving accounts around, we start having that conversation of what to basically improvements to be making. And then we have in our 4th meeting what we call the road ahead meeting, where we've worked through a financial planning software called Right Capital, which really is our hub of gathering all the details of a client situation together. We work in taxes, so we're kind of naturally accountants. And so we like detail and we really like to get into the nitty gritty. Nothing's perfect, but as best as we can, we map out a client's situation in Right Capital. And then that road ahead meeting allows us to run basically spreadsheets into the future of where we think you're going to be at in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and allows us to adjust different variables that if we make this change, this is the outcome that we expect to happen. And so it basically centers us and allows us to do really robust planning for the client and help to give clarity on the trade-offs that they're facing if they do this, what the cost might be. All that to say, our first meeting, the life planning meeting, we work through what are called the George Kinder questions. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but he's kind of a thought leader, at least in the circles that I run, in which the whole intent of that meeting, a good 45 minutes out of the hour and 15 minutes we spend with a client, is just working through these questions, getting to know the client. So there's a number of things we do. We work with another person associated with the Millionaire Next Door. I believe it was Stanley Hauer was. Anyhow, her daughter is Sarah Fallow, has continued his work. And I know Sarah directly and am working with some of the psychological tests which she runs. And so we'll run that through financial satisfaction and basically alignment between spouses. And so we take that information, the completion of these surveys, and we have just a really meaningful conversation in which we're brought up to speed. What is the current plan for the clients? Because they have a plan. They have been working together, usually if they're married, and if they're single, they still have some kind of plan with their finances. What has been your plan? What is it that you're wanting to accomplish? Let's learn that about you. And then let's see what we can do to continue making steps to help you accomplish that.
I think this is fantastic. As you're speaking, I'm just nodding my head. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. This explains why you and I are on the same page. And so for those who may not know, be as familiar with some of the people that Ben is name dropping here, very casually, I might add, these are big names in the finance space. So first you talked about how you got into this by Robert Kiyosaki and I think this is the most sold finance book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Right.
This book is really great. If you've got a friend, family member who you're trying to get into finances, I would probably give them this book. It is not a book that is going to tell you, oh, you need to invest in this or invest in that. He tells a story of his rich dad and his poor dad throughout the book in a very easy to read sort of way. And the premise of the book is buy assets and decrease your liabilities. And so most people read that book and get very interested in real estate investing. Then you mentioned Dave Ramsey. And although people have very strong opinions about Dave Ramsey, one of the things that he is really good at is helping people get out of debt. And so you have that sort of debt mindset or debt payoff mindset from Dave Ramsey. Then you mentioned George Kinder. George Kinder, this makes so much sense given your philosophy background. George Kinder came up with the Kinder questions that are really famous. You might have heard variations of these questions questions and just didn't know that they came from George Kinder. But some of these questions are, if you had unlimited money or money was not a problem for you, what would you spend your time doing? Really helps you figure out what you feel like your purpose might be. Another Kinder question that's really famous is, if you found out that you had between 5 and 10 years left to live, what would you spend your time doing? Helps you really figure out how you prioritize things. Another Kinder question is, if you found out you only had 24 hours left to live, what would you regret? Really helps you rethink the way you spend your time. And so I love that you are asking your clients these questions of really getting into what's important to them, what are their priorities. Then you casually mentioned The Millionaire Next Door, which might be also a really, I don't know how many millions of copies this book has sold, but this book became popular a couple decades ago. And as you mentioned, the author has since passed away, but his daughter has sort of continued his legacy. And I think she published a book, The Next Millionaire Next
He
Door.
did. Yep.
And so the premise of the original book was that you probably come into contact with millionaires more often than you think, because the average millionaire doesn't look like what you might think. They're actually the person next door. They're the person who had a regular job making the average American income and just saved over time. And so it really gets you into that mindset. So I love that you are just casually name dropping these very big people in the finance space. And it really helps me know that, when we send clients to you or when clients come to you, that they can really trust that you're going to get to know them. I don't know any financial advisors that are asking their clients the Kinder questions and blending all of these different philosophies together. So I think this is fantastic. Ben, over time, we've met several years ago, but over time, I've learned that you have quite a bit of physician clients. So I was just kind of curious about how you came to work with physicians.
Well, little by little, as most things happen in life, admittedly, it wasn't our intent to do this from the outset. When I first launched my business, because again, I did a few years in the commission broker dealer space. And so I'm familiar with that business model. And I have my criticisms of it, but there's reasons why that model is what it is and why it does work. We can maybe circle back to what to think about the differences in advisors and how they're compensated, because I think that's a worthwhile conversation. But I did work in that space for about a year and a half, 2 years. But then when I decided, that just wasn't for me, I want to launch my own firm. I want to work clients in the way I think it's best suited to work with them, and only in the way that I want to work with them, and not have someone else tell me how to advise and how to guide and how to direct. We're independent, and that's still true today. I'm the one fundamentally who gets to decide what the right advice is for our clients. And quite frankly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Now, we're not on our own on an island. I have a vast network of other professionals that we're collaborating and working with at all times. And so when we get asked questions that are outside of our area of competency, I turn to that network to get better solutions and answers for them. I certainly don't know everything, but there isn't anybody else calling the shots in my business other than me. I'm the one who gets to decide what the right advice is. And that's how we can maintain our fiduciary commitment to our clients. But to your question of how did we get working to physicians? It's well, naturally enough, as I started the business, I would come across a few people who were physicians and had questions. And so we started working together. Aspirationally, I was hoping to work with people of really kind of all income levels, quite frankly. And some of this goes back to my prior days in ministry and not wanting to limit ourselves to just the ones who make more money and are relatively well-to-do. But as I've been in the business, what I've come to realize is look, as great as that's a nice aspiration and it's rather noble, but we are running a business here. And the people who probably need and desire the advice the most are higher income earners. And they're the people who can also afford and pay for the service. And so in terms of everyone winning, it does tend to be in this higher income area. As I've progressed as a business owner and become smarter in my business decisions, it started to become clear that I think who we could serve the best would be physicians. So at one point, I was connected with another organization in which they were initially sending tax referrals to us to handle their taxes for student loan purposes. And many of those referrals coming to us were folks with large amounts of student loan debt. And then they were needing us to decide whether or not to file separately or jointly as a way to manage that student loan debt. And naturally enough, the person who kept coming to us either was a physician, a dentist, attorney, a psychologist, a veterinarian, a lot of these folks who have a terminal degree and ultimately acquired a lot of student loan debt, have higher income now, but they're not sure what to do with the student loan debt, maybe other financial matters. And so to answer your question, Alicia, we've just kind of come into it. It wasn't my intention necessarily, but I kind of woke up one day and realized that 25 to 50% of my book of business, regardless, was physicians. And it's I should just decide to be all physicians. And so that's where we're at now. Our preferred client is working with medical professionals, physicians, as who are taking on as new clients.
Yeah. So I had mentioned before we started this interview that that's actually how we met, is because you weren't advertising this, but basically you were the go-to person that could help people kind of figure out married filing separately, married filing jointly. And you said that so casually and so humbly, but basically what I want our audience to understand is like there was this very large company, which shall remain nameless right now, but they were basically sending you all of their clients because you were the smart person that could figure it out. Although you didn't set out to just help physicians, right? You come from this ministry background. You're like, I'm going to help everybody. Then you're like, okay, well, physicians have a lot of debt. And all of my clients are physicians. Why is it that the people who need this analysis the most are physicians? Sort of naturally took off from there. But I want to transition the conversation a little bit into sort of what sets you apart from other financial advising firms that physicians specifically could go to. You know, you mentioned when you first got started, there was this other side that was like selling products and earning commissions. And then you transitioned away from that. And I think we see that a lot in the finance space for doctors is that when doctors want to hire a financial advisor, oftentimes they inadvertently get put with somebody who is trying to sell them a lot of products like whole life insurance, annuities, and other things that earns the advisor a commission. But you and your company are different. You all don't do that. Can you talk about sort of what sets your company apart, how you all make money, if you wouldn't mind sharing, and why you feel like this is the more beneficial model for a physician?
I think without question, it's the right model. The model in which we operate, which I'll speak about in a moment, does tend to only be used by higher income individuals because that's where the numbers start to pencil together and it makes sense. It would be my hope that in some ways everybody could use it, but I will say in my experience, I just don't think practically that's what would happen. And we would expect if anyone's providing a professional service, that person should be compensated for their work. Only if they've done something good for you and they have expertise in an area and you're looking for guidance from them, you would want that person to be paid. But the manner in which they are paid is an influence and may decide what kind of advice that person provides to you. And it's worth noting that all insurance and all investment products, at least in their origins, were a commission-based arrangement in which organizations, institutions needed basically capital to be raised in order for them to do better as a company and for them to make the numbers work for what it is that they're doing, whether it's an insurance or an investment product. And so their intent was to energize a workforce of salespeople to go out there and raise that capital. And they're fundamentally salespeople. They're knocking on doors and they're trying to find somebody to say yes to the product that's being offered. And then in exchange for finding that capital for the institution pays them a commission. That still has to happen. Like institutions, an insurance company doesn't just run and operate. It needs clients. It needs customers. And if they don't have that, the whole business falls apart. So it makes sense for that sort of thing to take place. The thing that happens is that fundamentally the advisor in that situation isn't working for the client directly or isn't even necessarily advising the client directly. They're only selling the product that the institution has to offer and provide. And they're really working for that institution. That's the person who pays them. And so it seems from the consumer level, like, wait, great. I go and I work with this person. I don't pay them anything. We have nice, friendly conversations. They tell me I need to go buy this. I buy that. I'm not sure how they make money, but everyone's happy. It's free advice, as they call it. I think fundamentally the worst advice to get is free advice. If that person's not being paid directly by you, like, how do you know that advice is worthwhile would be the question I would throw out. We've just gone away from that. We have zero commissions in any of our business model. Instead, we work directly with all our clients in which they either pay us on a monthly subscription fee, or maybe we pull from their investments. Most of our clients pay us a monthly fee, much like you would have with any other bill. We meet with clients on a regular basis after we do the initial onboarding. It's usually at least twice a year. Plus, we'll do their taxes, and we can chat about that in a moment. The whole point of us working together is for us to basically advance your finances as well as you need them in order to achieve your goals. We're here to learn what your goals are, and then we're here to turn around and try to figure out what it is that you need to be doing to achieve those goals. And then any questions that kind of come up along the way, we're just a phone call or an email away. And so clients get to know us. There's never a sales pitch. Like the only sales pitch that you'll get from us is from the beginning in deciding whether or not to move forward with service. I mean, if you don't move forward with services, then that's fine. Plenty of people don't. That's okay. But then if you do move forward with services, you're a client. And now our goal is just to take care of you and make sure that you stay happy with the service. And so I just think the alignment of our interest is fully there. And we're not limited then, like buying a house, buying an insurance. If you don't need the insurance, or if you've already got enough insurance, or you've got insurance through other means, I don't have to close any of these products for you because you're already paying me. As far as I'm concerned, the matter is settled and done. And now it's just a matter of trying to figure out what's right. And we have had clients come from that prior model and now they're working with us. I will say, I mean, they tell me this firsthand, both of these physician clients, they're like, I didn't realize how much this other person wasn't an advisor. You know, that's what they told me. They told me they're an advisor, but now actually now that I'm working with you, I really see what an advisor looks like. Like, wow, okay, you guys are so much better. That was one client, again, physician. Another one was like, we used to have, it was a good person who's like a family friend, and they met with them. And it was a fine relationship. is what they told us, but it always felt a little icky because every time I talked with him, I always thought like he was trying to maybe sell us something else, or there was another thing that we needed to get. And I don't know, we always kind of walked away from the conversation, not sure if that conversation was for us or was for him. Like, was that even a good use of our time? He said, we never have that sense when we meet with you. We feel like we're just chatting with a friend who's just trying to tell us what seems like the best thing to do for us. And yeah, I mean, clients like our business model. The ones who buy into it, they're all about it. They think it's the right fit, the right way to go.
Yeah, Ben, I can say that I've had the experience of some of the physicians that you highlight here, where we're purchasing something. It's like, did you explore more than one option? Because this seems a little pricey. And then they give you some answer to kind of satisfy your question, your curiosity. But when you explore further, you realize that they hadn't. So I really appreciate that the fees are transparent. It does not cloud the picture. The advice that you're providing, these products that you should purchase, that you're not getting any kickback from them. It seemed clear, more transparent, and the recommendations is really based upon their goals. I really appreciate that. Now, outside of financial advice, we've talked about it, kind of around it a little bit, but a lot of physicians have a lot of student loans. And I know, Leisha, I keep doing this to you.
Why you got to put me? Why am I catching this straight? Yes, I have student loans. The audience knows this a lot by now. You don't have to remind them every other episode.
So Ben, because, we have a mixed bag of audience members here, those who still have student loans, and student loans are, for lack of better terms, a little bit of a mess right now.
Lack of better terms. I'll go with that. Yeah.
So can you just share a little bit about if someone has student loans right now in the chaos of what is student loans, how would you help them kind of navigate this environment?
Yeah, well, it is challenging. I had student loans. Our approach for handling them was ultimately to repay the debt. I'll take a moment here just to share. I mean, there wasn't a clear career path for me coming out with a master's degree in philosophy. Maybe that's kind of obvious. One funny question people like to throw out there is like a famous question philosophers like to ask is, would you like to have fries with that? I didn't find that joke so funny a number of years ago, but I can at least laugh at it now. It took me a while to kind of figure our own finances out because I wasn't sure where we're going to go. I'm thankful for my education. I'm not sure if I would do it all over again because it was definitely trying at times to know where we're headed. But one of the things we had was a lot of student loan debt in the early years. And so we did take an aggressive approach and just repaid the debt. That worked. Now, knowing what I know now, I don't know if I would have done that the same way because my wife works only in public service and we could have only gotten a good portion, if not all of her debt forgiven through that. And so we ultimately probably repaid some debt that we didn't need to repay. But to answer some of your question, Brittany, there's really just one of three options for any student loan borrower out there. It's repay the debt in full, which, that's kind of the natural presumption. We take out debt. Most times you got to repay the debt in full, and that's how debt works. That may ultimately be the right course of action for an individual. Specific to medical professionals, and a lot of times having the opportunity to work for nonprofits or a government entity, so a hospital or a university, a 501c3, there is this pathway forward of public service loan forgiveness in which we adjust the payment based on your income or the standard repayment. There's different ways in which this can be handled, but then we work towards getting the loans forgiven rather than paying them back in full. And so if that's something that's in the works, then you have to explore PSLF, I think, for every client as much as possible. I've run dozens, hundreds of student loan consultations and analysis. And many times, if you can get PSLF, like that's the way to go. It's golden ticket. So we can chat more about PSLF if you wish, but that would be your second option. The third one would be, maybe the debt's rather high, repaying it all the way back seems like a little onerous or perhaps not even possible. We're not working in public service. We're working for-profit institution. What else is available to me? It would be a long-term or an income-driven repayment forgiveness play, as it's called. Now, that third option has not become as favorable of a solution in light of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act legislation that was passed in July. Still could make sense, but usually if you're going to go in that third option, it's because the debt to income ratio, individual income, is rather large. And we're talking probably at least 1.5x, probably more like 2x or higher of debt to income. So let's say you make $200,000. What I'm saying is your debt needs to be at least $300,000 or more, 1.5x difference between income to debt in order for long-term forgiveness to start to pencil out and still be advisable. So all that to say is we've had a number of clients in which we were thinking of long-term forgiveness. Now with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and with some good things happening in their career where they're now making more money than what they thought they were going to make, we've kind of reversed course and it's not long-term forgiveness any longer for them. We're just going to do full repayment, which, and then if you go into full repayment, you can consider refinancing and things of that nature to get a better interest rate. But those are at least the conversations we're having. We do have a very robust calculator that we've built out. I do have a bit of an inventor design angle and love. What's true of me is if I don't love something out in the marketplace, I'll just go and make it of my own. And that's what I did. I didn't love the software solutions in the marketplace when it came to student loan analysis. I didn't feel like it gave enough granular detail for me to be convinced of the final answers. I was kind of just presuming the software worked correctly. I just wasn't willing to trust the software because things aren't perfect. And so I wanted to see a software in which I felt comfortable with the answers it was giving. And so I built out my own advanced Excel spreadsheet that helps us run the analysis, consider the consequences of filing separately versus jointly, and then what do things look like between those three options: full repayment, public service loan forgiveness, or long-term forgiveness.
Well, I think this is fantastic because, as Brittany mentioned, a lot of doctors, yes, me included, have student loans. And so finding somebody who can help them with their finances is one thing, but finding somebody who can help them with their finances while also keeping in mind their student loans and guide them with their student loans, I think is even more valuable because most doctors are paying a financial advisor. Maybe the money's not coming directly from their pocket, but they're paying that financial advisor in some way that they may not even be aware of. And then they got to go to somebody else and pay for a student loan consult. But you can do all of that in house. And I love that. And one of the other things that you include is taxes. So many physicians need help with their taxes. Maybe they've hired an accountant to file their taxes for them. But one of the things that I really love is because you are also a financial planner, you are also helping them with tax advice and strategy throughout the year, right? Because you're also managing their investments. And so you're saying, hey, you could invest this way, but this might be a more tax efficient play. And then you're the tax professional. So you don't have to say, consult your tax advisor. You're the one doing the advising. And so it's just great to be able to say to a client, or from a client perspective, be told, hey, this is option one, this is option two, this is option three. This is the tax implication of option one, of option two, and option three. This is the student loan implication of option one, option two, and option three. And then work with the clients. And then you're understanding what they want, what their goals are. So it's not you saying you need to do this. It's you saying, all right, based on what the goals that you have that you shared with me, this is what I think might be best, but I'm still going to present you with your options and you get to choose. And I like that you're presenting them sort of with all of that information. This seems great. Can you give a little detail, share a little bit more maybe about like how you do that? And also, this seems a little bit too good to be true. Are you charging them $1 million? Like, how sort of is all of this kind of working together?
Well, good. Well, I'd love to talk about the taxes, and then we can talk about our fee structure and the billing associated with it. In terms of the taxes, I have different designations behind my name. So I have a master's in philosophy. I am a certified financial planner now at this point. It took a few years to get there. I believe I picked up that credential in 2017 officially. Soon after that, I picked up the enrolled agent designation, which is related to tax work. I was chatting with a CPA a number of years ago who just said, look, most financial planning is tax planning. Why don't you just do tax preparation? And I thought, you know what? I think you're right, that it is mostly tax work, and tax preparation would just be a big win. And that's where we can really make sure that everything we're talking about tax-wise, it all comes home on the tax return by and large. And so there is a disconnect where, maybe you're working with an advisor who's got all these ideas and is putting things in play. But there's a handoff that takes place here that then your tax professional, the one preparing the returns, has to equally be aware of these because they have to pick it up in the tax documents, which aren't always very clear. And then it has to get reported the right way on the tax documents. And if it doesn't get reported in the tax return correctly, all that tax planning and value can get lost and missed. We don't have to worry about the handoff because it's just one from one hand to the other hand. And so there's no miscommunication there on our part. So I picked up the enrolled agent designation a few years ago. Right after that, back in 2018, I became a certified student loan professional, in which I went deeply on student loans. And then, as just to throw it out there, I have a fourth designation in retirement income, where most of our clients are young, but good retirement income planning is knowing basically what assets to have in place ahead of retirement. And so we're thinking of your retirement throughout the whole time that we're working with you, even if it's maybe 15, 20, 25 years during your career. So taxes, I ended up starting that business a few years after the financial planning business. They are two separate businesses. And I had done that in conjunction with student loan borrowers who, one of the things that I ended up hearing through a conference was, I have this newsletter of folks who've got student loan issues, and the right course of action for them is to file separately, but their tax professional refuses to do it because they think it's a dumb idea and it's going to cost them more in taxes. And so when the tax professional talks them out of it, they keep filing jointly and it screws up the whole student loan plan. And it's like, I just need a tax professional who understands student loans and know why filing separately would make sense. And I just happen to be at a point where I'm like, oh, well, I know both student loans and I know taxes. I can be of help here. And so I started a business basically starting to help student loan borrowers who needed to file separately, not only filing separately on the tax return, but quantifying the impact of filing separately versus jointly, and then having a practice of amending tax returns in the future, because you can change your filing status from separate to joint. So if you do pay a large amount in taxes, that can get corrected within 3 years of the initial filing. So we do that. That's our business. And so all of our clients on the financial planning side, by and large, participate in our tax services. And then we do have some, as we call them, tax-only clients, people we don't do financial planning for, at least not yet, but we are just handling their tax returns. So if you're a financial planning client, the tax services come at no cost. It's basically comped to you through your financial planning fees. But if you just want tax work, just tax preparation and maybe not a broader engagement, we do handle that through our tax business as well. So fees would vary then accordingly. Some of our clients, again, another physician client comes to mind, had an advisor that he was working with, had a good working relationship with the advisor, trusted their investment advice and guidance, wasn't always the most responsive, didn't get back to them. Sometimes they had weird meeting times, and then ultimately didn't do their taxes. And we at the time were doing their taxes. So he was one of our tax only clients. And he's like, gosh, it'd just be nice just to have one person doing it all. I don't want to have to go chase it down. I don't have to be the intermediary medium running information back and forth. I like you guys doing your tax work. Gosh, you do financial planning too? Sign me up. And, he's come on, they're a great client. And so it just makes a lot of sense it just simplifies and makes things easier. It doesn't allow for miscommunication or guidance. We can just bring it all together. In my opinion, I think it's the future is that more financial advisors will get into tax work and you'll be seeing it as a one-stop solution, but that's currently not the case. We're pretty unique in offering that. If you'd like, Alicia, I can start to chat about our service offerings and how those could maybe be a good fit, but does that help maybe to clarify things on the tax side?
Yeah, it does for me. I know Brittany's like thinking to herself, well, how much is it? I know you've got some special pricing for our listeners because honestly, Ben, it seems great. You've known me for years and bless your heart, I'll send you some complicated email with some complicated tax questions and you'll be like, so Leisha, this is what I believe the answer is. However, I don't know your entire financial situation. Like I know I need to just come on over and quit bothering you every
Right.
few months with complicated tax questions. But this honestly seems great. So many physicians have so many different retirement accounts open to them, 401k, 403b, solo 401k, 457b. And they're like wondering what these different accounts are. Should they do pre-tax? Should they do Roth? There's the backdoor Roth. There's the mega backdoor Roth. Then they've got $300,000 in student loans they have to repay. And they've got a complicated tax situation with a spouse who maybe is an entrepreneur or whatever. And so it's great to know that they can come to you, you can help them with these things, and you're not going to try to sell them whole life insurance, annuity products, other products, so you can make some quote unquote commission. Instead, you're going to hopefully have some transparent fee that they know about and that they can pay either directly from their pocket or from their investments, but at least everybody's on the same page of what they're paying and what they're getting in return for what they're paying. So Brittany's like, don't put words in my mouth, but that's what I would assume she was thinking. Brady, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
So, Ben, to ask a different question, how much is it?
Well, we can start with the financial planning, Brittany, and then we can chat too about tax services if someone's looking for a tax-only engagement. I will say, now look, medicine, as you know, is like it's a broad concept. So just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you're qualified to speak to all components of the human body. Either, you need a specialist or I need to make a referral for that. And look, taxes really aren't all that different, right? So depending on what a person is needing, yes, we do handle taxes, but our expertise really is in personal finance. So anything that takes place on the Form 1040, we've got down lights out by and large. But you get into more complicated arrangements when you have business ownership, especially if that business is being taxed as a C Corp or an S Corp level, or then if, let's say, you have a partnership instead and you're working with a small medical practice and you've got multiple physicians on board. As you get into more and more multiple business owners and especially outside investors, like that level of tax work is not something that we're able to support or handle. It's not the focus of our services. Our services are in personal finance. Like once you've made the money, what do we do with the money? Now, I can answer those questions all day long. Do quite a bit of work on the individual taxes. We do provide some support on business tax level at, again, the SC Corp level or partnership. If that's a mainstay or something that is a big question you're not sure about, we may need to pass a referral onto it, either a business accountant or bring somebody else into the relationship. It's not something that I have complete expertise in, naturally enough. In terms of our financial planning engagement, we do have a special arrangement with Wealth Minded MD. So Leisha and Brittany are hard bargainers, and they're like Come on. And so we're very happy. Love to give you guys a great deal. I do think this is a great deal. Our fee isn't a flat fee. Sometimes people ask and want that. Well, just charge me the same amount. Why should the fee vary? Well, the fee varies because not everyone's situation is equal. And what I mean by that is there's different levels of risk and complexity that are taking place. You can start to see both that risk and complexity manifested in both household income and ultimately net worth. It's rather simply as a client's income or net worth increases, our present billing model is to adjust and try to capture the complexity of your situation based on those two dynamics. At the end of the day, if the fee was flat and held the same across all the board, more complicated, more riskier engagements wouldn't make sense to pursue, because if I'm getting paid the same across all of them, why take on something that's too risky? So I think you have to have a billing methodology that scales. A full flat fee arrangement, in my opinion, doesn't work. So we aren't completely flat fee in that regard, but we do have preset fees depending on your situation. And specific to Wealth-Minded MD, we've opted to turn around and provide a flat monthly fee, again, either paid out of your monthly cash flow or potentially from your investments if that's in play, in which, depending on your net worth level, this is what you would pay to work with us. So all clients pay an initial down payment fee of $1,000. That helps to cover the first 4 meetings we have with you. Now, each of those meetings runs about an hour and 15 minutes, and there's some work before and after the meeting. So quite frankly, $1,000 is a great price for all the work we put into the engagement. There's probably 15 to 20 hours of time that we spend to help get you onboarded, which takes place over the course of 3 to 4 months. After that $1,000 initial payment's made, then you would start making an ongoing monthly payment. Now, what monthly payment you make depends on your net worth. We have it set up where the lowest fee that we'd offer would be $350 a month. So $1,000 down, $350 a month. That would be if your net worth is up to $500,000. Now, if your net worth is in excess of $500,000, say between 501 up to $1 million, the fee would bump up to $650. And then if your net worth increases beyond 2 million, it steps up to 1150. And so again, the idea here is that we want to be capturing the complexity. It's not just simply that there's complexity. What we'll start to pursue with clients as their net worth increases and it makes sense is what are known as alternative investments that are limited to what are called accredited investors. And so in order to be an accredited investor, your household income has to be 300,000 or more for the last 3 years, or you have a net worth in excess of $1 million, not including the equity of your home. And so, we wouldn't want all of your investments to be accredited, even though we do expect higher returns with them. But we're comfortable with somewhere between 10 to as much as 25% of your portfolio in an accredited investor arrangement. Those tend to have higher investor minimums, but they also have higher returns. And so somewhere between 10 to as much as 20% returns is what we would typically expect for one of those solutions. And so as your net worth increases, that's what we're starting to think and talk about. And again, just to kind of capture why would you see a fee increase there? Well, it's because we're working more to try to get those set up. Those aren't as straightforward as setting up an IRA and investing. There's subscription agreements, private placement memorandums that have to be reviewed. There's some due diligence that would be done. But, the upside to all that is we would be expecting even higher returns if those investments pan off.
No, that sounds great. And just to put this into perspective, Ben, when I say flat fee, I'm just basically meaning like it's not going to go up or down usually within the course of a year. And that's one of the things that we love. I'm always about transparency. I want people to know exactly what they're paying for and know exactly what they're getting in return for that. And I think this is great. So many financial advisors, they say their advice is free, but really they're trying to sell you expensive products so that they can earn a commission, or they simply charge based on assets under management, which is like based on how much money they're investing on your behalf, they're going to pull their fee directly from those investments. And so again, people assume it's free because they're not writing a check, but really it's not. What I love about you is you're saying, hey, you know what, for your listeners, anybody that's got a net worth up to $500,000, you're just going to pay this set $350 per month. And that $350 per month is not only going to help you with financial planning, it's also going to include student loans and taxes. I know tax advisors that charge more than $350 per month, and they're not doing financial planning or student loan. And so this is one of the reasons why I think this is such a good deal. Oftentimes we may not realize how good of a deal we have it until we reach out for other services and we're like, oh crap, I guess that was really discounted. So I really love this. I think this is great pricing, especially because you're doing all three of those things. And yes, as you mentioned, somebody who has a net worth of $500,000 is going to need different things than someone with a net worth of $2 million. And the fact that you're able to help them with that is fantastic. Some people may be thinking, well, what is different? Well, one, you've got more money that you can deploy in different ways. You just mentioned the alternative investments. When you get a net worth of $2 million and you become an accredited investor, you have tons of different investment options open to you. And you're going to need to understand the pros and cons of those investments. Should you do direct real estate investing? Should you participate in syndication? Should you invest in oil and gas? These are some of the things that people with higher net worths are thinking through. And I love that they can trust that you can help them navigate those things, right? Help them understand their options, understand the advantages and disadvantages of those options, and guide them so that they can make an informed decision that works best for them and their own goals. So I think this is fantastic. I realize I have diarrhea of the mouth, so I'm gonna let Brittany go right now because I just keep talking and Brittany's like, please let me talk. So go ahead, Brittany. Sorry.
Oh my goodness. In addition to all the things that Leisha has just highlighted, I just want to say the peace of mind, because I hesitate to say this because I know you're going to say something, Leisha. My God. We fortunately are the higher net worth.
Rich. If y'all didn't catch that, trying to be so modest. It's like we're on the higher net worth side.
But we weren't always there. So I was at the point where I needed someone to help me to calculate, okay, should we file married or jointly, or should we file separately for my husband's student loans? And then as we've grown, we have navigated into the space of alternative investments and really understanding the complexity of that and how it feeds in and works with the other types of investments and products within our portfolio. It is a little bit more complicated. There is more paperwork that you have to do. So I just want to kind of justify the fees, and to have someone who can do it all. Like, we have a tax accountant who charges us more money than what you are charging as a flat fee. So to have someone who could do the taxes, who can do the finance stuff, make sure that you're not letting your fear and amygdala derail your financial plan, and to have the check-ins, I think that the pricing is great. And I love that you have incorporated that it's scalable, right? So it's not where you at a lower net worth, you're not paying these high fees, that you have also been very thoughtful around that. Okay, so I just have one shameless question to ask for myself and for the people. If you had to give us 3 things that we should be considering at the end of the year or to start the new year off right, what would be your best financial planning advice for us right now?
Well, you know what? I give a presentation, Brittany, every year to a local university that's geared towards how basically your basic money management principles. Like, what are the 3 things you need to do in order to do well in your finances? And these aren't necessarily end of year, although there is some component to them. But I do think it is what you have to do in order to do well, regardless. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to pivot a little bit on that question and give you what I would advise as my 3 fundamental takeaways for your finances to be in solid shape. One is you have to have a plan, no matter what you're doing. We have this tendency, especially with folks who've accomplished themselves education-wise, which you have as a physician. And I think one of the things you have to do is give yourself a pat on the back, recognize that there was a huge investment, a huge risk. If you're to the point now where you're an attending, like, you need to realize you've made it. Financially perspective, if you just manage your money well for the rest of your life, like, you made a huge investment, a huge risk earlier in your life, and now that's paid off. We commonly will get folks who are like, oh, show me all these really sexy investments. And I don't mind doing that. That is kind of part of my business. But I will tell you, like, you don't need any of those sexy investments. Your sexy investment was going to medical school and fighting through residency and eventually becoming an attending. And that one's paid off and you're in the money now. Okay. So, like, that's it. So one is have a plan. We tend to be very good, I think, about working our way through education, but we're not necessarily always very good about having a plan on your finances. And the reason why you have to have a plan is that no matter who you are, we only have the thing that's unique about us as humans is that we have unlimited desires matched with limited resources. And I will say that again, because this is just so true. And it is at the crux of all of this. We have unlimited desires matched with limited resources. And so what happens is no matter how much money you make, you will always want more. There's never enough. Your desire will never be satiated with the resources that you have. So have a plan. You need that plan in order to know the line of what your money can and cannot do for you so that you can basically keep things in check. The second thing is to have a winning mindset. All of us challenges and struggles and difficulties and setbacks in our lives. I've seen this. I have a number of high income earners. Someone lost their house in the LA fires, or someone only loved the area that they were living, but they lost their job and had to completely relocate their family and was torn out from that community and go somewhere else. 3 of those were people who were making lots of money. Look, money doesn't solve all the challenges in life. It certainly helps, but it doesn't solve all those challenges. So you got to have a winning mindset. Make sure that your head is in the game, because if your mindset is not right, there's nothing else I can do with you financially to get things working for you. So mindset is like so important in winning and succeeding in finances. The third piece would be just be resourceful. What can we do to stretch our dollars and make the most out of them and be smart with your decisions? This is ultimately where we come in with our clients for those who are looking to work with a financial advisor. So we help them to be resourceful and let them know what they need to do or can do in order to make improvements in their finances. So again, have a plan, have a winning mindset, and be resourceful. If you consistently do all 3 of those things, you'll do well in your finances.
Well, I just want to say the fact that you repeated that phrase, the minister is there because you wanted to make sure that the people heard it. So thank you for that. And I really love that what you have taught us, in these 3 tips for strong finances, whether you have a net worth that is negative because you have a ton of student loan debt or you have a multi positive net worth. Like these are consistent and they don't really have to do with money or investments specifically. It's like clear principles that we should be operating under all the time. So in 2026, people, we are not bringing sexy back, okay? Ben has shared with us that we're keeping it plain and simple, and we're just working the plan and doing it consistently. And Ben, I love how you keep people on that pathway. So thank you so much for being here. Leisha, thank you for sharing Ben with us. And we need to sign up. So I don't know how you all feel, but I'm ready.
No, this is great. Thank you so much for joining us, Ben. I wanted to let our listeners know that if they are looking for a financial advisor, that your firm is accepting clients. Just you're nodding your head. I'm like, okay, yes, please tell me you are.
Yes.
And that your company is willing to help people manage their money, understand their goals, help them to reach them. You're also willing to help them file their personal taxes. You're like, hey, Leisha, I'm setting the limit. I'm not going to file your business corporation taxes for the 20 doctors in your practice, but you will do personal taxes, which we appreciate, and also helping them with student loans. So I think this is fantastic. Hopefully other people do as well. I love your advice, as Brittany stated. And so it seems if people want to contact you, they can do so by emailing you at hello@bonafidefinance.com or going to bonafidefinance.com/wealthmindedmd. We love that you gave our listeners a little discount. So we appreciate you and your team for that. Any other parting words or anything else that you wanted to say before we let you go?
No, this has just been wonderful. Thanks for the opportunity to be in front of your audience. And if any of you is considering services, please do reach out through the web links. We're all about taking good care of our clients. I know our clients love us. You might be a little late to the party for this, but we do send out Christmas goodies every year. And so if you came on as a client, you'll get Christmas goodies in the future. But those are all homemade. We're very much a family business, and doing what's right for our clients is what we do every single day. And I think it shows. Our clients know it and they love us. We'll take good care of you. So if you're looking for an advisor, really encourage you to reach out. Let's see if we're a good fit for together, and let's start working together.
Thanks so much for joining us, Ben. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Well, Leisha, it was so great to talk to Ben. I learned so many new things, and I'm excited that we had the opportunity to share him with our listeners. Now, since we've been talking a lot about money and planning for all of these goals that we have, I just gotta ask, how have you been spending your money on fun? I need to add some additional bucket list things to my 2026 fun money. So I'm learning from you. So share with people.
Well, besides buying Christmas gifts for my family and friends and that sort of thing, which I would happily share, but it's not Christmas yet. And so I don't want them to hear it and the gift then be spoiled. So I will reserve that conversation for a later episode. But one thing I am spending money on is charity gala tickets. So I had dinner with one of my close girlfriends that I had not seen in 5 months, because that's how crazy our lives are. We will periodically check in and be like, hey, I'm alive. I hope that you're alive. I do love you. I have been busy. Please let me know if anything crazy is going on. We will grab dinner sometime, just not this month. And then finally we were like, okay, we got to actually make the dinner plans happen. So we had dinner, which was a lovely conversation. She was updating me on her life. And one of the things that she did was she said, hey, Leisha, I'm actually going to this charity gala next week. I would love if you could join me. I know you got a lot going on, so no pressure if you can't make it. But I think it's a great organization. Would love it if you could buy a ticket. She doesn't have any stock in the organization. She was just like, hey, it's a great thing. They're also having a toy drive. You buy a ticket, it includes your food and drinks, and you get to wear a fancy dress, whatever, and hang out with me again. And do you want to go? And I said, you are one of my closest friends. Usually if there's an organization that you feel very passionate about, I'm at least willing to give them a look. And I don't know much, but it's the season of giving. I'm going to try to make this work. And so not only did I buy a ticket, but I also invited one of my other girlfriends, and I said, hey, my other friend, there's this charity gala going on. You want to join me? And she was like, yeah, I do. So all 3 of us are going to go to this charity gala for a good cause. So I spent money on the ticket, got a new dress, and I'm going to see if I can find some time to buy a toy to bring for the toy drive. So that is how I am spending my money for fun.
Yay. Well, I don't think I'm putting that on my bucket list, but I appreciate that you are giving to charity and you brought someone else with you. So you brought a friend who also will help to elevate the finances of those charities. It's a difficult time for nonprofits right now. It's a very challenging time for nonprofits. So I think, the responsibility is upon us for us to try to fill in the gap. And I love that you're doing that. So for me and my fun money, I know my family members aren't going to listen to this episode. So
We're going to persuade them, okay? Because they do like our financial advice.
it's so funny. We talk about this all the time. Like when your mother listens and they leave a comment on your post or something like, okay, thank you, mom. Anywho, I will be buying some gifts. I have not purchased them yet. It's around this Christmas season where I like to show appreciation to the teachers and all the staff at the daycare because they really do a tremendous job in caring for our children, supporting them. And one of the things that we typically do is just to get like breakfast for all of the daycare staff. So we'll be doing that where, I bring yogurt, good bakeries, pastries, drinks, and coffee and that. And then I'll be purchasing some gifts for family members. But honestly, I have not purchased anything only for Brooke and KJ. I have not purchased anything for anyone else. So if you have any gift ideas to share with me after this episode, I am willing to accept them because it's always a bit of a challenge for me on this end.
Do you and your husband exchange gifts?
We typically do. How it usually works, though, is we just tell each other what we want. I mean, honestly, we should just buy them for ourselves because it's coming from the same pot. But we do, so a couple of Christmases, he bought me a necklace. I bought him a suitcase because he was like always traveling for conferences and things of that nature. Nice shirts with his abbreviations on them. And we've purchased some gift items, but I don't know if we're going to actually do it this year or not. We haven't really discussed it.
You seem so thrilled to do the gift exchange.
You know me, Alicia. Like gifting is not something that gives me a lot of joy. I enjoy seeing people excited about the gifts, but there's just a lot of anxiety about the whole process. I wish that there was someone where I could just fill out some information, they'll buy all my gifts and like send them out to people. So if somebody wants to start that business, I'm your first customer.
That is not a bad idea if I had more time. All right. Well, hopefully you enjoyed the episode today with Ben Martinek. Again, his company is one that is not only willing to help you with your finances, they also do this deep dive to really understand you and your goals before they ever start investing any money on your behalf. They can also help you with your taxes, help you with your student loans. It's sort of like your one-stop shop for a lot of your financial needs. And so if you would like to schedule a free consultation with Ben and his team, feel free to do so. You can click the link in our show notes to go directly to his website, which is bonafidefinance.com/wealthmindedmd. He's giving you some special pricing as long as you mentioned that you are a listener of ours. So happy holidays. We cannot wait to come to you again next week.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittany Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisa Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.